What's up, people? We back another episode. Relationships comedian Lance Woods.
Pastor A.K. Thrower.
We back. We. Oh no, we good, man. Just get the microphone up so the people can hear us. We back, man, with another topic, but it's actually the same topic. We're gonna continue talking about this because there's a lot to be said on this subject, man. Right now, we're talking about men being spiritual leaders. What does that mean to be a spiritual leader? What does spiritual leadership look like? What are examples of men who were spiritual leaders? You can go look in the Bible. You can look in the world. You can look wherever you want to look. How should a woman react to a man being a spiritual leader? How should children act? How should people act? This it's all about men being spiritual leaders.
And what happens when men aren't spiritual leaders? Because like anything else that's out of order, it doesn't work. You know, you walk up to a Pepsi machine and it has an out of order sign on it and you still put $2 in it, then I guess you out of luck. So anything that isn't functioning correctly is not going to work. And that's what I think we see in our society today. And that's why we see all of the turmoil, all of the craziness, the confusion, the chaos, because ultimately society is a culmination of relationships. Mm-hmm. So when these relationships aren't in order, things don't work.
Yeah.
So that's what we see in our society today.
Yeah.
So I think the first question we have to ask ourselves is, for you, Lance, what does it mean when we say spiritual? Since we're talking about spiritual leadership, what is spiritual?
Yeah, that's a good question. You saying in my eyes, or how do I think people?
Yeah, in your eyes, or people, or whatever you want.
Well, I think whenever you say spiritual, people look at that as like the unknown, or like the I don't even know how to explain that. But whenever you say, because like I think we're in a generation right now where a lot of people will tell you they don't go to church, but they're spiritual. And I ask, what does that mean? And then they say, I believe in God, I pray, but I don't think I need to belong to a church.
Right.
So when people think spiritual, you think of, godly things, or how they say now, higher power.
Right. I think some of that is true to an extent, because I think you can look at or be involved in things that are pertaining to God, and they're not spiritual.
Right.
They're carnal.
Mm-hmm.
Carnal, the opposite of spiritual is carnal, which means fleshly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of religion is very fleshly.
Yeah.
It deals with making the pastor a celebrity, worshiping a praise and worship singer, getting in your best clothing to go to church so you can be seen. There are churches who people have special seats because they're good tithers. And to me, that's worldly. That's not spiritual. Yeah. So just because you're talking about God doesn't make it spiritual. Basically, what spiritual means is that it is dealing with the world, and specifically relationships, from a perspective that is not humanistic in nature or physical in nature. So in other words, if I'm a guy and I'm dating a girl and all I'm looking at is her hips, her lips, her fingertips, her boobs, and her butt, then I'm not looking at her in any context of spirituality. I'm not looking at what's on the inside of her. What kind of personality does she have? Is she sweet? Is she understanding? Would she be a good partner? Mm-hmm. Or is her eyelashes just three inches long?
That could I be in the club like, look at all of this personality.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah.
So that's what spiritual. It deals with the makeup of the thing that is not physically seen.
Yeah.
Because, and I say this all the time, actually, spiritual things are the substance of natural things. Like this table right here. It's a physical table, but it was made from a spirit. And people look at me weird, like, what are you talking about? Well, it was made because someone thought in their mind, and they conceptualized in their imagination that wow, it'd be nice to have something that I could set material on, or I could set in front of me as a platform. And because they thought it and they imagined it, that spirit. So before it became physical, it was spiritual.
Yeah.
So that's what people have to understand about spiritual leadership. It's dealing with things that actually are the substance or the thing behind what we get in the natural. So if we now have a divorce rate of 60%, if we now have a fatherless rate, especially in the African American community, of 75%, what is the spirit behind that? Because there's a spirit behind it.
Yeah.
So if we see a healthy marriage, what's the spirit behind it? So when we talk about spiritual leadership, we're talking about men understanding that one of their roles and one of their obligations is to be able to discern what's behind making a marriage, a family, child raising effective
Mm-hmm.
to where it can be successful. And
Yeah.
that's what spiritual leadership is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So the interesting part about that is, I don't think people know the answer to that question, to those questions. So you say, what is the spirit behind a successful relationship?
All right, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, to help them understand it.
Yeah, but because people, and people think when they get in a relationship, they talk about being quote unquote in love. And I said that's not gonna keep y'all together.
Well, if you
So
understand love, it will.
I'm talking about the being in love. I think when people talk about being in love versus actually loving somebody, I think
Right.
when people talk about being in love, they're talking about a feeling and butterflies
Infatuation,
and
right.
infatuation and those things.
Right.
But if love is sacrifice and long suffering and not holding grudges and those things, but as a spiritual leader, you have to be the one who
Well,
makes sure of
let's
those
start
things.
there because that was the first area I was going to talk about being a spiritual leader. You have to lead in love. So, just for a biblical or scriptural background, it says, "Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church."
Mm-hmm.
And then it says this, that he might cleanse and sanctify her through the washing of water by the word, that he might present unto himself a spotless church without spot or wrinkle. He says, as Christ loved the church, so ought to men to love their wives as they love their own bodies
Mm-hmm.
and gave themselves. So what does that say? So it says this. So first of all, if I'm going to be a spiritual leader, I have to lead in love. So what does that mean? So it means uh, I have to give myself. So I think that's one of the big issues with men today. I think men struggle with giving themselves to a woman.
Explain it though. What
It
you mean?
means sacrificing.
Okay.
That it can't be all about me now. That even though I don't feel like it, I have to take some time to do things that are going to uh, help develop the relationship. I have to spend all my money. I can't spend it all on me. If I got kids, I have to take the time to not just show up on the weekends. I have to be there. I have to be present.
Mm-hmm.
That's what giving yourself is.
Yeah.
And Christ gave himself, and he's telling men, if you want to be a spiritual leader, you got to give yourself. I know a lot of men that are single that are even my age, and I tell them, you're too selfish to be in a marriage. You can't, when you married to a woman, you can't really be just all about me, what I want to do, when I want to do it. I mean, I don't stay out all night.
Yeah.
Not that I can't. I would catch hell when I got home, but I could still do it.
But was it worth it? Is the question.
Yeah, was it worth it? Exactly. And then it says this, that he might cleanse and sanctify through the washing of the water by the word. So it goes into transition. So if I'm not willing to give myself, then I'm not going to be willing to tell my wife nothing. So he says, you cleanse her and sanctify her through the word. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship, But after you've been in a relationship a while, one of the biggest complaints men have is that women won't listen.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to tell her something. Well, you haven't provided the kind of leadership where she's going to listen. Because she's looking at you like, how you going to tell me something? And you don't even come home at night. You won't even take care of your kids. You won't even help pay the bills.
Yeah.
So now I don't want to listen.
Yeah.
That he might present himself a spotless church, which means, and men struggle with this. The Bible tells us that women ought to honor their husbands, men ought to love their wives, and it talks about how men cannot be the type of men who hold this grudge against their wives. Because when the Bible was written in the Old Testament, men would just divorce women for no reason. Oh, you burnt the bread, or you have a yeast infection. I'm getting rid of you.
Yeah.
Yeast infection be a little, But I mean,
Yeah.
so that's the kind of stuff men was doing there. But the Bible's saying you ought to see her as without spot or blemish. You can't talk about my wife. I can, but you can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and the Bible says, so ought a man ought to love his wife as he loves his own body.
Mm-hmm.
So leading in love means I can't do her dirty because I don't want to be done dirty. I don't want
Because
to
it's
do
like doing
myself
yourself dirty.
like doing yourself dirty.
Yeah.
So you have to lead in love, and leading in love requires commitment and sacrifice, being humble. When it comes to you wanting to stick to your ways or your guns about how things ought to be done or what you think. And it's difficult, man. I'm not gonna say I've been married 42 years, man. It ain't no cakewalk.
Yeah. I hope this ain't too off topic, but you talked about how back in the I don't know if this is Old Testament. You said when men would just divorce their wife for no
Well,
reason.
even in the New Testament.
Okay. And this be like a hot topic amongst people when it comes to relationships and biblical, like how it is biblically. Biblically, um, let me ask this better. What does the Bible say about divorce?
Well, that's people. Someone just asked me that. That's a multi-faceted question. First of all, it's saying that we should not get divorced.
Okay.
That from the beginning, God made them one flesh, male and female. But then it also says, because of the hardness of men's hearts, God allows it. So in a divorce, just like in a marriage, it takes two people. You can't stay in a marriage if the other person doesn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bible says, because the other person doesn't want to, because of the hardness of their hearts, God will allow it. And then once he allows it, the other person is free. But then the Bible also says the person who initiated the divorce, if he goes out later and gets married, then he's committing adultery in the sight of God. So it's a mixed bag with divorce. A lot of people, are being divorced and they feel guilty, and I'm like, why do you feel guilty? That's not what you want.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
You're free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for clarity, so you're saying the Bible says if you file for divorce.
Yeah, if you want the divorce, say you married to a woman
Mm-hmm.
and she wants to work on the marriage, she wants to stay in the marriage, but you say, no, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. And then
God will allow it.
And then you leave her, and then you go marry somebody else.
Then God says you're an adulterer.
Because you're breaking covenant, breaking the relationship just to go start a new relationship
with somebody else. And if you ever notice, a lot of divorced people have been divorced multiple times. Yeah. Because you'll repeat that same.
You're a habitual.
Yeah, because you have the same baggage. You haven't dealt with the issues. You've dealt with the person that you felt was causing the issues, when in fact some of those issues were your issues.
That was in the mirror.
So you're bringing the same type of spirit into the next relationship.
Yeah.
And our society promotes that. I don't know how many social media posts I see about cutting people off.
Yeah.
We live in a divorce culture.
Hmm.
You know, people talk about cutting off their mama.
Oh yeah.
You
Cut off
know,
their mama. They cut off their friends.
yeah,
Cut off their girl
right,
relationship, husband, whatever. Cut off their church.
right.
Cut.
Mostly for doing the same thing that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can figure that one
Yeah.
out, yeah.
But even within that, that comes back to men leading.
Comes back to men leading, right? Setting
Because
the precedent,
setting the precedent, setting the example. Let's say when things get hard, we don't run,
right?
we don't quit.
And that leads into the next part. How do you maintain spiritual leadership during tough times when you have trials and tests and there are issues coming up in the marriage or in the relationship? I think that's where the challenge is. It's easy to at least pretend to be leading when you're not having any confrontations.
Yeah,
So how do you lead during tough times?
man. For me, man, I think your principles are the things you stand on when things are tough.
Right.
When everything is easy, it's not it's like the big thing that's happening right now with the rappers and everybody telling on each other.
Right.
It's easy to say you ain't gonna tell on nobody if
You ain't looking at 50 years.
if you ain't looking
right.
at 50 years, but when they get you in that room and say, yo, you finna do life in here, and you got the answers to get you out of here, if your principles is you keep your mouth shut, let's see how you gonna stand on them principles.
Well, and that's what a spiritual leader has to do. You know, he has to know what my values and standards are for me, my relationship, and my wife. Now, what he doesn't do, he doesn't force her to lead to follow. He
Yeah,
has to lead by example.
yeah,
And see, that's the most difficult thing. I think with most men, where they struggle with spiritual leadership, when they start running into opposition, when they start running into difficulties and issues, they shrink away from leading. They don't want to lead because they're getting too much flack.
hmm,
They're getting too much opposition, and that's the worst thing you can do.
yeah,
Instead of saying, okay, that's fine. You don't want to go to church. I'm going. Oh, okay, that's fine. You want to leave and break relationship with my parents because something that happened between you and my mom? Okay, that's fine. But I'm not doing that.
yeah,
I love my mom.
yeah,
I know she be tripping, just like you be tripping.
yeah.
Matter of fact, I married her because she's just like you. Married you because she's just like her.
we all
Yeah,
we all be
right.
tripping.
But you
Yeah.
got to stick to your guns if you're gonna be a spiritual leader. You can't change your standards and your convictions, and that's one of my biggest issues with especially Christians, convictionless. Christians today have no conviction.
Yeah,
They get knocked off course by almost anything and quick to blame God.
yeah,
And then because I represent God, they start blaming me, and I'm like, I ain't did nothing to you.
yeah,
I didn't tell you to marry that man.
yeah,
I didn't tell you to move to Mississippi. Talking about you had a new job,
yeah,
and you know it's because you met somebody on Facebook.
yeah,
You know, and you do all this weird stuff.
yeah,
You know, and then you want to blame God. But see, if you're gonna lead spiritually, you got to be convicted to spiritual things like forgiveness, like faith. Faith is a spiritual thing. Confidence is a spiritual thing. Being bold in what you believe is a spiritual thing.
yeah,
And you got to be committed to that. Love, unconditional love.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a spiritual. There are lots of people I've had to forgive that I didn't want to,
I know.
but I have to be committed to those spiritual dynamics.
Yeah. Now, while you right there, explain this. Explain because we got this. We got sayings, right? They're not in the Bible, but
Yeah,
they
right.
sayings. It's forgive, but don't forget, and that's something that people stand on. And when they talk, it don't sound like they actually forgave them.
Right.
It sounds like they saying, okay, I no longer want to fight you behind this. But everything that all of the energy that you're giving when you talk about this sounds like you still have the same issue,
Right.
you know, with the person or the situation. So the question is, what does actual forgiveness look like?
What the word forgiveness means is to let go, to let something go, to release it, to give it over. Now, that doesn't mean that you've forgotten what the person's done.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's wise that you
Mm-hmm.
haven't forgotten, so that once you've released it, if you start seeing red flags that they might do it again, at least you know what it looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
that now you can protect yourself, whether it be guard your heart, whether it be keep your distance, because you know they really haven't gotten to a point to where, even though you've released what they've done, they really haven't gotten to the point to where they're over that kind of behavior. That's why the Bible tells us that, when they came to Jesus and asked him how many times you should forgive a person, 7 times, Jesus said 70 times 7 times. So I don't know what the math on that is, but I think that's 1,400 times. But really what he was saying was indefinitely, because sometimes people don't change overnight. I mean, there's still behaviors I have with my wife that they may not be as bad as they were when we first got married, but I still do it. She was on me the other day about the toilet, and she do things that still get on my nerve, even though she's better at it.
Yeah.
So, yes, you don't forget, but you have to still be willing to forgive, so that when the person does come to a place of complete change, you still don't have all this garbage and baggage and bitterness in your heart.
Yeah.
And that's for you
Yeah.
as well as for them.
Yeah. That's one of the principles that people don't understand, how much forgiveness is actually for you.
Right.
Because if I did something, if I stole something from you and I ran off and you don't forgive me, it's not hurting me because I already got the goods.
You already got it.
I done already ran off on you.
Right. And a lot of people won't forgive, and the person they mad at done moved on.
Yeah.
They live in a different life. They over it. They go on about their way, and you still living. And the worst thing unforgiveness does, it keeps you stuck in the past.
Yeah.
So if something happened to you 2 months ago or 6 years ago, and you still haven't forgiven them, that means a part of you is still stuck 6 years in the past.
Yeah, they call that arrested development.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you got next?
Well, I think for spiritual leadership, and I think one thing men struggle with is proper leadership roles for themselves. I think men struggle with having another man as their example.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying?
Okay.
So the Bible says this, that the younger men ought to submit to the older men. That, Paul wrote about 2 epistles to a young pastor named Timothy, giving him instruction. And ultimately, the Bible says the head of every man is Christ. So we have to have the proper example in order to be proper spiritual leaders. We have to have the proper examples in our spiritual lives, whether it be a pastor, or a bishop, or an apostle, or a father. And I think a lot of men, because they didn't have that father figure, they struggle with finding someone they can look to as an example of spiritual leadership.
Yeah.
So they pick all these other kinds of examples that basically don't have anything to do with spiritual leadership at all.
Yeah.
And is the antithesis of that.
So to make that even more practical, that's when you get drafted. When you get drafted to the NBA, when you're a rookie, you get paired with veterans who are going to teach you they're not going to teach you how to play basketball. They're going to teach you how to be a professional athlete. They're going to teach you how to carry yourself, how to talk to media, how to travel, what to do and what not to do when you go to these different cities. Me in entertainment and comedy, when I first started, and I still got all of my OGs in comedy, and most of what they teach me or show me has nothing to do with what's actually happening on the stage.
Right.
They're dealing with me in terms of, this is how you do your business. This is how you carry yourself with these clubs. This is how you treat the waitresses. This is how you travel. And I'm one of the people. I am very, very, very grateful to have um men, like older men. I talk to you all the time. I appreciate having the wisdom of men who've already done these things before. It's nothing new
Yeah.
under the sun.
Because the average young man today, they actually have a disdain for older men's leadership. They think they don't know what they're talking about. They from a time in the past, and basically, like the word say, ain't nothing new under the sun. It's
Yeah.
just repackaged.
Yeah.
This adverent sexual behavior, that's old.
Yeah.
Man, you read some stories about the ancient Greeks or read the Old Testament about Sodom and Gomorrah. This ain't nothing new.
Yeah.
This ain't nothing new. It was a guy on Facebook, a young guy. He was an Uber driver for me one time, so I got to know him on Facebook. But he does all these posts. But I responded to one of his posts, and he almost got indignant, because I was checking him, and I was checking him about something that I know, which is the church.
Yeah.
You know, I even heard Kanye West say, "Can't no older person tell him nothing." I'm like, that's why you're a fool. That's why you done turned into a fool. Because he used to be a very astute, very observant young man. But to me now, you're a fool. You're a fool, man. But he actually said that. Can't nobody old tell me nothing. Can't nobody older than me tell me nothing. I'm the one.
Oh no, he said can't. No, he said can't nobody with less money talk to me about money. Is that
No, not that one. He probably said that too. He's talking about age on this one.
Oh, okay, I gotta see it. He say so much, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, man, I value the game, the knowledge, the one thing. Well, let me say this: ain't nothing worse than an old fool
right.
who you've been foolish
But
for.
you can learn from him.
I would. My motto is, I gotta be able to learn from everybody and
Yeah.
everything.
That's why you should always honor your parents. The word say
Yeah.
that's the first commandment with a blessing. And some people say, yeah, but what if my dad wasn't there? What if my mom was, a prostitute? What if she was on drugs? I say you should honor her anyway, because if you don't honor her, you're not even going to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
See, when you honor an adult, an older person that hasn't lived a good life, you at least give yourself the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. Have you ever noticed that a young person who has complete disdain and hatred for their parent or an older person usually turns out just like them?
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
They be mad at their parents because they was alcoholics.
And you turn out to be a drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say, to wrap this portion up, for men that want to be good spiritual leaders, use Christ as your example.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was a lion and a lamb. That's what you got to be as a spiritual leader. You got to be a lion and a lamb.
Now,
You can't just be a lamb, though, and I would say you just can't be a lion. But to me, because society really attacks male masculinity, most of these men, most of them are lambs.
but
They don't have no lion in them.
you gotta explain two things. You gotta understand. No, you have to explain when you say be like Christ. I don't think people know what that means. I think people take that as be perfect or be godly.
No.
You got
I'm talking about Christ in his humanity. How Jesus was a lion and a lamb. How he was very caring. He was very, very meek. He was very humble, but at the same time, he was very dynamic and strong. He wasn't fearful.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't run away from his responsibilities, even to dying on the cross.
Yeah.
He didn't run away from that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he had compassion on the woman caught in adultery. He had the compassion on lepers who were ostracized in their day. No, lepers had to live completely away from everyone else. They were ostracized. He had compassion on them. He had compassion on the woman who was a known sinner. And she comes into the Pharisee's house and cries on his feet and washes his feet with her hair, and they are all condemning Jesus. And Jesus wouldn't condemn her. So being that example. He was a valiant defender of truth.
Yeah.
See, this is the way I am about truth. A lot of people don't like truth because they say, well, let's say I'm talking about God and someone finds out I committed adultery. And they say I'm a hypocrite. No, I'm not. I don't believe in committing adultery. I just did it.
Yeah.
I don't mean I believe in it.
I'm not championing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, oh, go out and commit adultery. No, I'll tell you, no, it was wrong. But see, a lot of people won't defend truth because they allow their imperfections to make them feel like they can't talk about what's right. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I know I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But I know God is, and I know my standard should be striving to be like God.
Yeah.
Now, I'll never get there, but I'll never shoot a perfect round of golf either, but I keep golfing.
Keep golfing. I'm keep trying. And the problem, to wrap that up, the problem is people stop trying and give up, then they start making excuses.
Right. They start, and then you turn into a weakling.
Yeah.
Because anybody making excuses is a weakling to me, or blaming other people.
It's everything. Yeah. You start blaming other people. You start curating all of these like sub
agendas or sub scenarios. Oh, the reason I'm doing this is because no, that's not the reason.
Yeah. Nah, because I mean, if you think about it, we wasn't even supposed to be doing that. See, the human biology ain't even created to even be like that. See, if God wanted us to not be that, then he wouldn't have even done it. That's
the brother from the brother pontificate.
So think about it. Really, if God wanted us to be with one woman, look, because why did he put so many here? That's what I'm saying. If God wanted me to have one woman, then he would have made all the numbers equal. But there's more women on earth than men because men are supposed to have multiple women. Everybody know that.
You preach. I don't know no fool that want more than one woman. Not these women. No. Sorry. I don't want more than one. No, not these women. No. They'll be conspiring against you. They'll get together. If you had 3 of them in the house, after so many years, they all would be planning on your demise together.
Make sure you sign that life insurance.
Yeah, right.
Papa gone, y'all.
Yeah, the old one would send the young one. She a sender in there with you. It'd be like, yeah, get him to sign this. Yeah, do what you have to, girl.
do what you got to do, girl. Give us free.
I'm just playing.
That's another one in the books, man. Hey,
all right.
We might do this. We might come back for part 3 of this. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, because there's another area I want to deal with. How you deal with a woman that don't want to be spiritually led?
You gotta save it.
Yeah.
You gotta save it. That's why I gotta come back, man.
Yeah.
Relationships. Appreciate y'all.
Peace. Love you.